Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's Thursday afternoon, and today I'm joined by Sean Connolly and Lawrence Connolly. It's the two Connollys. Well done, lads, for jumping in. Thanks for joining us. We have loads to discuss. Sean, you've not had an opportunity on Acsom, at least, to discuss the Rangers game. We've obviously been chatting about it all week, but I will be asking you your take on that. You are here representing Celtic Down Under. As if by magic, their logo appears in the top right-hand corner of the screen. So yes, let's get stuck in. The tagline might divide opinion. I'm going to come to Lawrence first of all. Desmond is spotted at Celtic Park, and today, in such times as everybody's got access to a phone, everybody's got access to the internet. Before you know it, the images arrive, and everybody has a theory on it. What do you make of it, Lawrence? First of all,
Desmond's, I think, in general, been great for Celtic. You know, when we got a bit of trouble, we backed another share issue. Period of domination for this century anyway. Is he over just checking what's happening? Obviously, we've got a new CEO in place. They may be sorting out Ange's deal. Who knows? But it's great that he's still taking an interest. We wouldn't want him to become an absentee landlord.
Is it not a horse racing season? Is that maybe why he's over?
I did read that this morning, actually.
York, a few winners there.
You had a few winners, have you, Lawrence?
Yeah, I'm sure I put it in the chat, mate.
You did, but I don't bet. So it's all gobbledygook to me, mate. No, that's a good point, Sean. So it could well just be that, as these things so often do, they just set a cat amongst the pigeons and we all start theorising about it. And, there's nothing wrong with that. And we'll talk about the potential of a new Ange deal. We'll talk about budgets for the new season, all that kind of thing. But you're right. He's probably just popping in because he's in the area. So he's decided to check in, make sure everything's all right. But as you say, Lawrence, and I'll ask you this one, Sean, a lot of people seem pretty disappointed that he is somewhat absent in presence, if nothing else. But he is the real deal. And that's something that most football clubs really need in the modern day to survive. The real deal with real finance. And he's already spoken, I think, about a year ago where he was saying there'll never be a new Celtic. And we all know what he meant by that.
Mm-hmm. And all you have to do really is just compare it to any other owner of any other club. Like, do you want to be Newcastle or Man City who are getting sports washing Arabian oil? Do you want to be like Sevco, who are like just absolute basket case of shares on whatever black market? Do you want to be like Hearts, where Vladimir Romanov is just sacking managers left and right and like just like then going on Strictly Come Dancing or whatever? I mean, like Hibs, 2 managers a season, Dundee United. I think we've done pretty well there in that sense. I know he doesn't just funnel all his money into the club, but we've finally got to a point, thanks to the unseen hand in FIFA, that we now have that's not really allowed for teams anymore. That's as of this season or last season now been banned. The owners can't just keep funneling money in. I'm sure they'll find some way around it like they always do, but for the time being, that's allegedly on paper at least leveled the playing field.
Yeah, you're right. And, again, when we look at the way that other football clubs are run, Lawrence, we've spoken so many times on Acsom over the years about where football's going, where Celtic inevitably will go. And Jim Orr, who is, by the very nature of his livelihood, interested in figures and accountancy, he talks of a day when Celtic kind of loses their soul, so be careful what you wish for. If you do leave Scottish football, for example, you become part of that circus. And I think that when you've got someone like Dermot Desmond at the helm, and I use that pretty loosely because he's rarely seen, which is why we're talking about him when he does show up. And you know what? He does have Celtic at heart as well, Lawrence. Then I think that, you can rest assured that the club is in safe hands.
Yeah, listen, he's a huge Celtic fan. But talk about leaving Scottish football, I don't know, I'm sure Paul McQuaid or Matthew Marr would be able to tell me better, but we've been trying to do that since the beginning of the 20th century. The Celtic board way back then were talking about it, and it was only, transport that stopped the idea of a European league then. At some point we may leave, but, I think we'll still be Celtic. It depends how we're owned, and I think Fergus part of his plan was always to be fan ownership. Would we really want to be owned by the Saudis, as Sean said? not for me. But
There
with the
was
big
rumours
success, success hides a lot of things. But
yeah.
I think the Fergus idea of a large proportion of fan ownership, or he wanted it mostly fan ownership, is where I'd like Celtic to remain. But it depends, how we perform financially, and love him or loathe him, Peter Lawwell certainly had us fiscally performing well.
Yeah.
Michael Nicholson seems to be continuing that. It doesn't look like we're going to be a club that's in danger. And I know there's been a few articles out, Celtic could be ripe for takeover. Well, you need to want people need to want to sell their shares in, wouldn't they? And I think as long as you've got a bulk of fans owning it, it's unlikely to happen.
Sorry, Sean, you were going to make a point now.
Sorry, yeah, I interrupted you, Lawrence. Apologies. I was on the specific point you were saying about the Arab money. There was rumours when I was living in Qatar in 2016, around about when the Green Brigade did the Palestine protest. So I was like working with a lot of Palestinian people, and they were like going nuts for Celtic at that point. And apparently there were strong rumours at that time that there was Qataris that were in for Celtic at that point. But it wouldn't surprise me if there was a story there, and Desmond is like had those conversations and told them no.
Yeah, I think David Lowe spoke about it fairly recently, didn't he? Certainly in the last 6 months, he spoke about how there was this vulnerability of that kind of money and that kind of ownership coming into a club like Celtic, and he wanted to safeguard that. And by the way, I think all these people have got the best interest of Celtic at heart, because they are Celtic fans. I'm really keen to hear what your thoughts are. There are a few theories and rumours circling around the the visit of Desmond. He might have just came in for a brew. Let's be honest, lads. There might not have been any real reason for it. We've got Stephen Sloan. Welcome to the show. You are viewing this on YouTube, as the majority of people are watching it on YouTube. And if you want to make a comment, get in there and subscribe. I'm just going to switch on the subscriber-only function because from time to time, you do get some rogues coming in to try and get involved and try and wind us up, because they won 3 points at the weekend, Sean. You've not had a chance to talk about that on Acsom, so I do want to come over and have a wee look at your own take on it. What was your thoughts on the performance at the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, they looked rattled from the start. And I don't know if that's that. I mean, that happened last year when we won 2-1 at Ibrox. We were rattled at the start. And then Tom Rogic scores after 10 minutes, and it's a different game. So if O scores after 10 minutes at the weekend, again, I think it's a different game. So it kind of goals influence games, but I also think, like, in hindsight, the way things are, would have been just as well forfeiting the game, because Todd Cantwell's allowed to just kick everyone going as much as he wants. He's allowed to go into the crowd and celebrate without getting booked. The referee and the SFA have already decided the outcome in advance. And if we'd forfeited that game, we'd have had the same result, and it would have deprived Sevco of their summer bragging rights, quote unquote, and it would have also deprived them of match day income. So I think we would have actually been better off forfeiting the game, and I don't see why that wouldn't be a reasonable choice in future. And I forgot to even mention the safety issue. Players still getting hit by missiles, racist and sectarian singing. Like, it's a spectacle that is an embarrassment to Scottish football, and I honestly think everyone would have been better off if we just not showed up on Sunday.
Listen,
Saturday, sorry.
That's bold, but I can absolutely understand what you're saying, Sean. And I think that Liam spoke about playing a weakened team, but it has been mentioned, forgive me if it was yourself that mentioned it leading into the game, Sean, speaking about, you know what, let's just forfeit it. It's a pointless kind of endeavour. But you're talking about the safety, and from that aspect, that's something that we've spoken about, Lawrence. It was the late, great Ian Archer, who once wrote, very bravely, I've got to say, in the Glasgow Herald in October 1976. This has to be said about Rangers FC. As a Scottish football club, they are a permanent embarrassment and an occasional disgrace. This country would be a better place if Rangers did not exist. Well, he got his wish, didn't he, in 2012? But when you look at the fan base who have attached themselves to the Phoenix club, Lawrence, the same issues persist. And as Sean says, missiles on the park. We've spoken about it this season already. So I think the bigger question is, how do we ensure the safety next season?
Well, remember when it was revealed there would be no players, I'd said, we should have forfeited the game then. We should not turn up. It would put a highlight on it. because there is the safety aspect, and how far does it go? You know, we've had the physio scarred for life, with fans scarred, and it's not just Celtic fans. You know, speak to other fans of other clubs, and they face the same in that corner. Constantly pelted with missiles. There's no nets put up. You know, it's not as if it's one off. There doesn't seem to be anything to remediate it. You know, the singing. You know, we know UEFA to tackle it. The SFA, SPFL have no appetite for it. We've had the Sky guy saying it's bouncing. Really?
Yeah.
You know, we've had in the past the old club a justice secretary describing the atmosphere as at Hampden one day as excellent, great advertisement for Scottish football. You're like, are you that tone deaf that you can't hear the problem? Or is it? Do you agree with him? You know, is that the problem? Do you agree with it? And you look down south at the abuse that James McLean takes.
Yeah,
you know, it seems to be tolerated to an extent down there. Lesser up here, because certainly, you know, there was a player of the old Rangers that get the longest ban for racial abuse down there. I think he's been welcomed back into the Scottish fold though after it.
Broadfoot. No, you're right. It is an issue, and we keep raising it on here. I don't think the no fan situation is good, and I'm not talking about because it's a spectacle or any of this kind of stuff. I just think that in terms of the influence of that Broomloan Road stand, 7,500 Celtic fans, there is an influence, a positive influence, and I want to get back to that. Whether or not that is doable, because they've probably sold most of the seats to season ticket holders, we shall see. Stephen Sloan, sorry, I did bring your comment up earlier. I'm worried the board won't back Ange this summer. I've seen a few comments like this on the socials. If we're considering buying players in J-League 2 and the bottom of the Dutch League and in Hungary, that doesn't give me confidence. Now, we did speak to Kevin McCluskey around the supposed target in Hungarian football. Kevin has a great knowledge of the game over there. And basically, it was a big no to Duve Koba. He doesn't think he suits Ange's style, and he doesn't actually rate the player that highly. There are better players over there, says Kevin. So in relation to that, do we have anything to worry about? Where are these concerns coming from, Sean?
Yeah, I think Liam had a similar take on the J-League 2 player. I can't remember his name, the attacking midfielder, that he wasn't really good enough. The Dutch player sounds good. He's got a pedigree of having been at Barcelona and Chelsea. So I know that doesn't automatically make him a good player. There's plenty of ex-players from those big teams that are like, you know, I think Glenn Kamara, for example, was at Arsenal. So I don't think having pedigree automatically makes you a great player. But yeah, look, these reports come out. There's so many players we get linked with and just it never materializes. You never know if it's made up, if there's anything to it. I remember there was one a few years back where the Cleaners took the name of transfers, the transfer list out of the bin and sent it into a newspaper. I don't know if you remember
that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And how many of those did we sign? Like, was there one, maybe? I can't remember. Like hardly any of them. So names, especially with the network we've got now, there's so many names. Like a scout from Celtic goes to a game in Hungary, people put 2 and 2 together. They might have gone back with a report saying the guy was gash. I don't really read too much into it.
You know, I was saying this yesterday, Sean, right? And I know it's part and parcel of the game. And I know that during the summer months, broadcasters, platforms, both mainstream and alternative, love all that stuff because it creates content and they can put it out. And there's nothing better than a really big sensational signing target and all this kind of stuff. And you remember all the terms that used to be used in the Scottish media about players being jetted in, Lawrence, and all this kind of stuff, right? But at the end of the day, I don't get that excited by it because the vast majority of the names that you see, and we will cover them on Acsom, we'll cover transfer updates, etc. But the vast majority of them come to nothing, Lawrence, you know. And obviously one of them's been in the news fairly recently, Ivan Toney, but we'll not go there. We've already spoken about betting earlier on. And in relation to the way that these names appear, I think Ange's already had his say on it, hasn't he? He says that you guys have got them in early and you are miles off.
Yeah, I don't think he could care less what the press say. You know, I know the scouting team, you know, much like the team in the park, they never stop. They've got a brief to identify players that will improve the team, and they're scouring the world for that. You know, and look, we've been successful in Japan. Will the board back Ange? You know, we could sign a Premiership player, but could we afford his wages? You know, if you signed someone from the Premiership, would it break a wage structure? So
or the MLS, Lawrence.
Or the MLS, yeah, for the wages they're getting. So it's not just all about the fee. We've got to remember the wages that are attached to it.
Yeah.
You know, so we may be shopping in less fashionable markets, or you know, certainly not the big six. But
counterpoint,
so far,
we signed Joe Hart and Carter Vickers from Tottenham as a counterpoint to that. So
yeah,
if the players want to come,
his career, you know, not playing, and he taking a wage cut. You know, I'm talking about, are we going to sign a premium signing, you know, 6 or 7 million from the Premiership, or even more, you know, because we do have a fairly large financial advantage. The days of signing like John Hartson's and Chris Sutton's and competing with the big teams down there, it's not going to happen.
But the thing is, Lawrence, I mean, obviously our budget's been stretched because you've been on twice this week. But in relation to that, we spoke during the week about how, you know, Martin O'Neill came in, all guns blazing, buying the big boys. And like you say, not just the transfer fees, but the whole package, massive. Yeah. But that did tail off eventually. We couldn't maintain that kind of signing policy.
It was in a bit of trouble. Had to have another player issue.
Yeah, we did. And obviously we had to have someone like Gordon Strachan coming in, pretty frugal in terms of the recruitment. I mean, I remember...
half the wage budget.
Yeah. And I remember
the two last 16s, mate.
Exactly. In 4 years.
Caldwell and McManus, as he likes to remind us, as the...
Listen, never knock Caldwell and McManus. The biggest mistake Mowbray made was kind of splitting that partnership up, I felt, because I think Caldwell was maybe the player of the year at that time, and McManus was the captain of the club. But I always remember Strachan going on about having the option of bringing in Craig Bellamy. So you think of Bellamy, you think of the hat-trick at Tannadice and all this kind of stuff. I loved Craig Bellamy, right? And you think, I just sign him because we're football fans. We get excited with that kind of thing. But for the same money, he went and he bought 3 players, one of whom was Nakamura. Zaraski, who, by the way, pretty prolific for a couple of seasons, top scorer in Strachan's first campaign. And the third, eventually, was Arthur Boric, bringing him in on loan initially. And you look at the way that he was able to do that. So how many of us had heard of any of those 3 players? Probably none of us, I would suggest. But he went out there and he went for a different option, but it worked for him. And I think that there is a key kind of element of season 3. If you look at the previous managers, and I've mentioned O'Neill, Brendan Rodgers, Gordon Strachan, and it's how the transfer strategy changes slightly, or how the quality of the player changes. So I can understand Stephen Sloan's concerns there, especially when you marry that into some of the players we've been linked to. But I wouldn't read too much into who we've been linked to. But you were talking about wages.
Did you hear the Matt Elliott story?
Oh, I did. That was brilliant. I loved
it's very funny. Under the Kosh podcast, apparently he was 32 and Celtic were in for him, Martin O'Neill. And he told his agent, because of his age, to ask for a bit of extra money. So he goes down says, okay, Martin O'Neill's going to phone you later. Go wait by the phone in the pub. Martin O'Neill calls the pub. And he goes, Matt Elliott answers. He goes, hello, am I speaking to Zinedine Zidane? He'd asked for so much money. And so apparently it was all lined up and he just asked for too much money. So it just fell through. But 32, what who would he been playing beside then?
I was just thinking that because...
and
we brought in Valharan. Remember, we brought in Valharan season 1.
Was that same summer?
And Baldy came in season 2. So he would have been in around there. And it would have been, for me, I know that Elliott was a really important part of that Leicester team. And then he became a bit of an important part of the international team as well. But I wouldn't have fancied that. A 32-year-old, I'm not going to call him a journeyman, but he's coming to that end of his career. You know, I don't think that would have gone down too well at the time, Lawrence.
Nah, I doubt it. I think Leicester offered him a 4-year deal, which I don't know how that worked out at Leicester. But
they went into administration, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Peter would have said, "What's the resale value in this?" You know, it's 32. I don't know what Celtic offered him 1 or 2 years. Who knows? But Silky, I don't think we could describe him as that.
It wasn't. Okay, no. But there's a couple of others, because I do remember interest coming and going around Muzzy, is it? But remember, we were interested in Stan Collymore. We were interested in Stan Collymore. Yeah. And he had worked with O'Neill at Leicester as well, briefly, did he not?
I think so, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Heskey as well, wasn't it?
he was mentioned quite a few times. I would have loved Big Heskey, the non-goal scoring striker, but he brought so much
I think
more to the game.
Rivaldo is the one we definitely missed. Yeah, you can come here and trial.
Rivaldo, that's
Jesus.
right.
Offer him a trial. It's
I know.
Rivaldo. Come on, he can play.
But the other one, of course, we were talking to Peter Grant recently, and he was talking about, and this is relevant to where we are just now, because he was talking about how when they went to Celtic, and he didn't say this on stage, to be fair to him, it was just in general chit-chat, but he and Mowbray came up and were basically told that they would be in control of the recruitment. However, with big clubs, and I think Jurgen Klopp's spoken about this as well, often, and Rodgers, when he was at Liverpool, you are presented with players and the club are going to be quite keen on doing a deal. And, you know, it's happening, even if the manager doesn't want it to happen. So when you start looking at some of the deals that were being done around about that time, but in particular, the players we were selling. So we ran a story on the blog the other day about Donati. Donati was a player that both Mowbray and Grant wanted to keep. So that when they came into the club, believe it or not, and I think this was more to do with his relationship breaking down with Strachan in Strachan's final season, Donati was not only on the transfer list, he was on the free transfer list. They just wanted rid of him. They wanted him off the wage bill. Mowbray starts playing him and he plays well. And, you know, I think we're wearing the jersey that you've got on the now when we played Arsenal, Sean, and he scores the goal. And I thought Donati was coming into a game. Grant and Mowbray played no part in his sale. They were not spoken to in relation to him getting sold. And he was sold under their noses. So that's the kind of thing that has gone on in the past. So I can understand some people coming in not only concerned, but terrified, as Chris Jardine is, that Peter Lawwell is trying to take over recruitment again. Was the team selection on Saturday designed to show the board that we need to spend? These are interesting points. Is Desmond in to resolve the matter? Listen, we could theorise all day long, but Lawrence, I'm going to ask yourself in relation to that. A, do you feel that Peter Lawwell would be interfering in recruitment? And B, do you feel that Ange would sell the jerseys to make a point?
I think Peter would get involved in recruitment. I definitely think for it, he'd be allowed to interfere is different. You know, he's got a lot of experience in conducting deals. I think when he wasn't involved recently, there were a few deals that didn't have the right selling clauses, etc., and that ended up costing us a lot of money. So it'd be ridiculous, I think, for Celtic not to make use of his experience. But to what level he holds sway, I suppose, is different. You know, it should be down to the manager, the final decision. And I don't think Ange would play. I think he's got players and he wants to find out what those players have. The back four, you know, that was the back four we could put on the park due to injury. You know, Greg Taylor's carrying an injury, AJ's out injured, and Cameron Carrick-Vickers is recovering from surgery. So that's your back four. Up front, we really need to know what O's got. You know, over Kyogo, he's a second choice striker. Big season next year, you know, getting into Europe, is he going to be good enough? We want to test him under pressure. It's not a lot of minutes. Where would they be playing? Would it be on Kyogo? Would it be starting Abada? Because he's back four, he didn't have a choice. I think the midfield, most people would be happy with that midfield. Atati, McGregor, O'Reilly. So, you know, you'd have Jota in the team. So I'll be talking about what he's playing at, or the player he's trying to make a point with, are Abada and O. Is really what it comes down to then. Well, Abada's got fairly good numbers as an impact sub. We really need to know if he can do it from the start. As I've said, O's not got a lot of minutes. I think his minutes per goal is better than Giakoumakis, but, you know, he's just had very few minutes. And yeah, we need to see what he's all about. So, you know, when you look at the team, if you talk about Ange picking a team to make a point, outside of O and Abada, I think everybody else would agree that was the team. You know, the defence you're forced into, the midfield would have picked. So
I would have picked Awata. I said that before. But that was simply because I think he's done pretty well against Rangers, and Hatate isn't quite back to his peak. I don't think.
Yeah, no. I mean, Awata's cracking player, maybe the best midfielder at the club, but you know, we need to get Rio up to speed. He's a creative player, so I wouldn't say that decision is making a point. Playing Hatate over Awata.
No, I don't.
About the depth of squad or what signings are made.
I don't think Ange would ever operate like that. I bet you there has been managers in the past who have. I don't think Ange Postecoglou would operate like that. In relation to the players that he chose. Sean, this is a discussion that Lawrence and I have disagreed on this week. I don't think Rangers was the game to give minutes, if you like. I think Kyogo, you play your top goal scorer, you win that game. And any minutes that you get, I think, are in the 3 league games between Rangers and the cup final. That's my take on it. But I understand what Lawrence is saying in terms of the high pressure situation, because there's, regardless of the 3 points having any bearing on the league title destination, you're playing in a cauldron. You're playing in a stadium exclusive to Rangers fans. So there is a higher expectation in that environment. But I think there's a higher expectation on Saturday. Full house at Celtic Park.
Yeah, and look, St Mirren have still got something to play for as well. Wait, St Mirren, Aberdeen? Forgot.
St Mirren.
St Mirren, yeah. So they've still got some. They're still playing for a European spot, so it's not going to be any easy game. Put it that way. And look, it's easy to say in hindsight that it was the wrong selection. But if shot is 6 inches to the right, then we're having a completely different conversation, and the game's a completely different outcome. And I get it, but the other thing as well is if you put Kyogo in and say Cantwell has 5 kicks at him, then he's off injured and can't play in the final. There is that. Then he's criticised, because he was criticised a year and a half ago for playing Kyogo when he was half injured in the European game. So you can't really win with these things sometimes, I think at the end of the day, the main lesson was these players did not rise to the occasion, and that's a concern for future derby games and Champions League games. They might be good squad players, but they're not going to raise as a level. And if my personal viewpoint is, whatever transfer budget we have, it's all well and good signing prospects, but I'd like to see us sign 2 or 3 players that are going to, I don't care what age they are, I don't care where they're coming from. I just want to see that next level of quality that can raise us up to a Champions League level and have us going to a den of sectarian racist chanting and come away with a win without any fans there.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And great point again with regards to the injury aspect, because Cantwell I counted 5 during the game. I think, Lawrence, there might have been more. I counted 5.
There was more, mate. I think that's 5
infringements.
First 15 minutes. The second half, there was another 3. And there was ones after that as well. So you're just...
There was 6 fouls, 1 handball, 6 kicks, a handball, and he ran into the crowd. So 8 offences.
8 offences, 0 bookings. Listen, it came into conversation, and I'm keen to get more comments up, so I'm not neglecting you, ladies and gents. I'll come back to you ASAP. 700 strong on the Thursday bulletin this afternoon. Talking of wages, and also talking to Giakoumakis, because you made a point there, Lawrence, about was it goals per minute at the moment is better. Giakoumakis, of course, top goal scorer in his first season and in Ange's first season. One of those players that slowly but surely starts to make it known that he wants more money, basically. Let's be honest, guys, right? We don't know what's happening in the background, but now, looking at the situation after it's happened, that's what's happened. He starts making the noises, and so Ange doesn't play him because he continually played him on the bench, and then eventually he moves. And interestingly, and I find it really interesting actually, that the MLS released the salaries of the players. There's a huge big list. Check it out, easy to find. And you can go through every single player. By the way, I've got a big sty in my, in case you're wondering why I'm looking half sleeping here. Giakoumakis goes to Atlanta and is on £27,000 a week. 27k a week, that's what he's getting. And just to give you an insight into the wages that are being shelled out, and there's much bigger ones, but what I decided to do was have a look at some with a Scottish flavour. So Ryan Gauld, who struggled to get a game at Hibs when he was on loan, is at Vancouver Whitecaps on a £2 million salary. He is earning 38.5 grand a week. Ryan Gauld. Okay. Victor Wanyama, £27,300 a week. Lewis Morgan, Colin Watt's favourite ex-Celt, he's now at New York Red Bull earning £21,269. And Johnny Russell, Sporting Kansas City, is on 15.5k. So we're talking about competing, we're talking about recruitment, but even the MLS can offer wages that, let's be honest, I mean, 38.5k for Ryan Gauld is, like, seriously, this is a serious question. Is a Celtic player making that kind of money right now? 38.5 grand?
No. There's a couple at Sevco, but not at Celtic.
And that's Ryan Gauld. A player who, great potential. We thought he was going to be the next big thing. He's making a decent living, but he's playing in the MLS. And it does beg the question that I think we've been very, very cute in the markets that we've used, but we can't even compete with MLS clubs, Sean.
Well, I think they have the rule of the marquee player, so they have 3 players that can break their wage structure. Unless that's changed, that used to be the case, where there was 3 players that were allowed to pay whatever, and everyone else had to be within a cap. So we could be technically competing for the non-marquee players.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. On the wider point about certainly the bigger names and the more established talent, yeah, we can't compete with that.
Just cannot. And I mean, Giacomakis is a great example. A great example of that. I mean, we brought in O, for example, right? And there's been loads of talk about him this week. Some unfair. I'm not going to write him off after one. It was a bad performance. Quite the whole team was bad. Let's be honest. But his wages compared to the wages A that Giacomakis was on, and B what Giacomakis is now getting, I think would be a fraction, Lawrence. So we are operating in a completely different world, aren't we?
Yeah, but we've got a business model that works. It was only the 10 season that we changed it. We buy players in with an idea we're going to sell them for a profit. We've got fairly rigid wage structure. We're not throwing money about like Safeco, who are continuously posting losses. They've got.
It's all right though, because Graham Souness is going to sort that out.
Yeah, I think they've got 5 or 6 highest paid players in Scotland. Meanwhile we're going to get an 8th treble. It's so it's not all about the wages you pay. We've got to pay decent, but we've got to work within our budget, and we've done that incredibly well since McCann takeover. We've done really well with it. MLS is going to, I'd imagine, a bigger TV deal than us. Certainly got a bigger audience, haven't they? So you'd imagine the deal would be bigger. If we're going to worry, about who we can compete with and who we can't, we've got a budget. The scouting team and Ange will know what it is, and it's up to them to make sure they get the best bang for the buck. And Ange has been pretty flawless so far in the transfer market.
See, one point earlier, Sean. Sorry, Sean.
Sorry, yeah. I was going to say, I think I get what you're saying, Lawrence, but I actually think before and after the 10, or certainly since Ange came in, rather, not before and after the 10, but since Postecoglou's came in, our transfer policy has changed, actually, in the sense that, and I know it's difficult to remember because you think of all the successful ones like Edward and Ayer and Christian Armstrong and all the players like that. But what was actually happening back then was we were absolutely hoarding young players. We were just signing them up for the sake of it. Like we had those 2 boys from the MLS, Gutman and I don't remember the name of the other one.
Manny Perez.
That's Perez. And then we'd have players coming in like Bayo, Klamala, Kundai Benyu, all sorts of players. We were just signing anyone that was like under 20 and had any bit of interest in them. We were just stacking these players up, and then now and again an Edward would hit or an Ayer would hit, and and that was kind of justified that business model. Whereas we've actually kind of, so far with Postecoglou, we've gone to, let's sign a player that is a 75% chance of actually impacting the first team, and then we sell them on for a moderate profit instead of a king's ransom of a profit. We're not going to get any sell-on fees. Like we're still talking about Tierney's sell-on fee. We're still talking about Frimpong's sell-on fee. There'll be no sell-on fee for Juranovic or Giacomakis, but we made a profit on both of them. And they both made a significant impact on the first team in an 18-month spell. And I think that's a departure from the old model in a sense.
That's
interesting. I think, Juranovic and Giacomakis, the rumours are that the change there was the short-lived CEO and his deals, wasn't it? And what they came in.
Who else?
Those were done differently.
Who else would have been in that time frame? Abada?
Shaw. Yeah, Abada,
yeah.
Urigidi probably. McCarthy.
Not Kyogo.
No, Kyogo not.
Did he last? Did Don Mackay last to the Hearts game? I'd need to check that.
I think he did. I think Don Mackay lasted to the end of the transfer window, did he not?
Right. So you got Starfelt and Kyogo as well then?
The JT90 walk.
I might be wrong.
Yeah, JT90 walk. John Thompson 90
lasted to them. I've heard the rumours. It is a concern. But as Sean says, I just think that there's more of a plan. There's more of a plan, Sean, in that it was almost like, right, you've got all these players, it's like you're shooting fish in a barrel. One of them's going to make you a profit. The other 9 aren't. The other 9 are Kouassis and all these kind of guys. Probably Sorrow's part of that. that kind of strategy as well. I do want to talk more a wee bit about Desmond coming to the Celtic Park, Jungle Lion. Let's hope that his appearance is a big kitty also. I think there is already a big kitty, and that's before we sell any players, and we'll talk about that as well. And that's also before any of these legacy sell-ons that you mentioned, Sean, because obviously the Tierney one, I was looking at fairly recently, interest from Newcastle, 30 million. And you think, well, we could make maybe £3 million off that deal. And then you read a report this morning, don't know how much weight is in it, that there could be a swap deal between Arsenal and Man City, which means Celtic wouldn't make a penny. It would be like for Cancelo. Dembele.
The sell-on will be on the profit. Anything over 25, not the total fee, won't it?
I'm not quite sure.
It varies.
Depends on the deal. Because remember the Dembele deal? They were talking.
I remember 50. The Vidica deal.
Which one? Buying them or selling them?
When we sold them and we bought the part of it, and that was on profit, and obviously didn't move for profit, so we got nothing.
Well, I mean, Vidica, that's a wee blast for the past. Moussa Dembele, 50 million they were talking to Man United, and obviously his contract run down. He's going to go free. So there's a couple of these sell-ons that we're not going to get. Napoli, is that the latest one? Yeah. So the interest from Germany, Italy, England. We were talking about the dream Celtic duo of Edouard and Dembele the other day. But we still have Frimpong, Christie Ayer and Edouard because I do seem to remember that there were sell-ons at all these players. But we're going to have money. There's no doubt about that. I think that the concerns maybe Stephen Sloan and some others have got is some of the comments that have been made, not just recently, but, leading up to this time, normalising the fact that some of the big players will be sold. And I think we're getting to that bit of the season, Sean, where we're thinking, well, let's hope it's no Rio Hatate. Let's hope it's not Jota or Kyogo, heaven forbid. What happens if we do, though? What happens in the summer if we do sell two of these guys? Can we replace them? Do we have the ability to replace a Rio Hatate? How do we replace him? Because I think he costs something like £1.5 million. Is that a one-off? You're not going to get another player like that for 1.5, are you?
No, I'd be surprised if we replace him in that value. I mean, how many hidden markets are left? When we've found Van Dijk in the Dutch market, it was an untapped market, and it's not been since. After Van Dijk makes it big, it's like, where did this guy come from? Okay, let's go look there. So if Hatate goes for 20 million this summer, then it seems like there was a Japanese centre back linked with AC Milan this morning. I seen Kamada or something. I can't remember his name, but I think that market's going to be kind of found out pretty soon. So I doubt we're going to replace him in a similar wage range, but I do think he's replaceable. We wouldn't have thought that Alistair Johnson would be an automatic upgrade in Juranovic because we'd never heard of him, and there he is, and he has been. So I think it is there to be done, and we have to just hope that people are doing enough work in the background. With we've no idea who could be anyone anywhere in the world, no idea to us. And I realistically, I could see Hatate and O'Reilly going for 30 million combined this summer, and hopefully they've already got a few names in the pipeline to replace those two.
See if you do something like that, right? Let's just consider this for a moment, Lawrence, and you've already got the money in the bank, and then you bring in a massive bounty on one or two first team players, plus maybe one or two of these legacy, because I think Frimpong's probably on the move this summer, right? And you've got this massive stack of cash. What does a club like Celtic then do? Because I'm with Sean on this, right? I've said before, I'd get rid of 9 or 10 of the guys that are out on loan. They're not contributing. There's a couple in there who maybe have youth on their side. Get all the guys off your wage bill, right? And you've got all this money. I would much rather go out and buy 4 or 5 top quality players. I'm talking of the same kind of ilk as your Jota and Carter Vickers. Because at that point, you're strengthening. Even though you've lost a couple, you will still strengthen the overall squad, won't you?
Yeah, I think as long as it fits within the wage structure, we've got to be looking at players who'd make a difference in Europe, not players to win things in Scotland, because I think we've got that covered. As players that can come in and make a difference in Europe. The guys out on loan and maybe keep Montgomery, the rest of them. Yeah, we've got 9 on loan, haven't we? So yeah.
There was 12 all in. I think you and O2 came back after the Pars won the league, but there's still quite a few players out there. And you're talking about the wage structure though, Lawrence, like 4 of the guys, I would much rather use 2 of their wage. I would use the wages of Barkas and Ayeti are reported 30,000 combined a week and go and get a £30,000 player. I'd much rather do that.
Yeah. So 30,000's kind of round about our top mark, isn't it? Of what we pay. So that's within our wage structure. It's if you were to go out and I don't know, pay 40, then you've got the other boys in the squad saying, well, wait a minute, if he's on 40, what do we do with the money? Will we ever build the museum, the hotel? You know, they've got the plans. It would put us further ahead in income. You know, we're already ahead with the extra seats in Scotland. You need something that's, you know, that's somewhere you could spend somewhere, and it's long-term income for the club. You know, keeping players. Look at the last season. We tried to keep players that didn't want to leave. You know, let's keep Edward. We'll really need them. Didn't turn out that way. You know, it's a risky strategy. I don't think anyone would go down the route of keeping players that don't want to be here again. So a lot will depend on the players, how happy they are here, and if they want to leave. And I think Ange has been crystal clear in it. You know, if they want to leave, you probably know about it and have your replacement lined up, perhaps in the door before you're out the door. You really couldn't care. You know, if you want to leave and you're not part of the programme, see you later.
You noticed the change in Giakoumakis, didn't you? You noticed that Ange's approach to Giakoumakis changed at a certain point, maybe around November time, Sean. And you thought to yourself, this guy's not getting a game. He's going to be benched until he's off ski. But Ange has had the Midas touch in the recruitment kind of world so far. I would expect that to continue, though. I don't think it's something that dries up. The ability to spot a player who will fit your system, to check him out in terms of the character of the man, see if he's going to fit the dressing room, that's going to continue. But like you say, the markets that he's tapped into now will be saturated. So it might be more difficult to get the gems.
So the way I look at it is I'd like it to evolve rather than change. So who are we competing with realistically when we're signing players like Kyogo or Furuhashi or Hatate, O'Reilly? Who are we competing with? And these players we're competing with what, like mid-table Dutch teams, maybe top-tier Belgian teams like Club Brugge. That's who we're competing with. I'd like to see us raising now that we've got such an established squad, we should be looking for the quality, which would have us competing with tier teams and next level up, which would be your Leipzigs, your Salzburgs, your Porto. These are the sort of, like, remember Porto bid like 12 million for Njam. So their model is spend up to £10 million in a player, and then you sell that player for 30 million to when he's proves good enough to play for Liverpool or Man City or whoever. Like that's where I'd like us to dip our toe into.
That would be interesting. And by the way, we're obviously going to speak about the St Mirren game and also the contract around Ange. But before we do that, a couple of wee things. First of all, on this day, Lawrence Conley was born, a very, very special figure in the world of Celtic. He's actually on this crest of Ballymote Celtic. And it is, of course, Andrew Kieran's, better known as Brother Wilfred, who was born on this day in Ballymote in Ireland in 1840. So it's incredible. It really is. It's an incredible story. It's almost cinematic when you look at the formation of Celtic, Lawrence. But we actually do have a debt to all the historians out there who, you know, used to read the books. My Bible at one point was The Glory and the Dream by Pat Woods and Tom Campbell. Obviously, we finally released a single of the same name. But these guys are still out there doing great work. People like Paul at the Shamrock, for example, spreading the story, spreading the history. And I think you're going to an event tonight.
Yeah, so it's a Brother Walford and Michael Davitt event. So you've got Dr. Michael Conley and obviously Paul McQuaid from the Shamrock. Talking about both of them at Red Ross's, London Road, just in at the Barras, 7:30 kickoff. So looking forward to it. I was on the 130th anniversary of our first league win. I was at Matthew Marr's walk round about Celtic Park, pointing out some important places. So that was absolutely excellent. And Matthew's got a book out as well. I think there's a ball, he's got 2 out, hasn't he? He's just released his second. So excellent book. And really looking forward to tonight and just listening to Michael and Paul and sharing their knowledge about Celtic and the early days. I'm really hopeful that Brendan Sweeney will do a talk one day because his books are just outstanding. But
he doesn't like the limelight. Doesn't like the limelight.
And You know, a guy that was involved in saving the club, and geez,
Big
the
time.
research he's done into his books, unbelievable. You know, you read his books and it's like, it really takes you back there. It's like you're walking through the streets with him. It's phenomenal books by Brendan. But yeah, looking forward to this evening. But to go back to your point on Ange and having the Midas touch, you know, and will he lose at transfer market? Some people might call it lucky. I think Ange calls it, you know, 25 years of experience.
Exactly.
You know?
But Lawrence, another thing I need to point out is we are actually heading towards, interestingly enough, 25,000 views on The Glory and the Dream on the YouTube channel. And I was thinking earlier this month, wouldn't it be great if we got 25,000 views by the 25th of May? So a few days to go and a few views to go. I think we're about 400 views short. So when you go into the channel to give us a thumbs up and subscribe, have a wee watch of that video. There is one member of the Acsom team who appears in the video, Lawrence.
Indeed.
There certainly is down at the Barras. Let's talk about Ange then. Let's talk about the contract. I'll come to you first, Sean. Lawrence and I have spoken about this in the past. Some people are quite happy with a 12-month rolling contract, and I get the understanding behind that totally. However, we're at a stage now where Ange came in, some might say as an unknown quantity. He's heading towards his 5th trophy out of 6 domestically. He's been an incredible, for me, an incredible impact he's had on the club, both in recruitment, culture, bringing the fan base back together with the club. He's been an incredible success so far. And I'm of the view that you've got to protect that. And I think you've got to look after him as well, because if there has been interest, and we've seen loads and loads of clubs linked to him, but if there has been some genuine interest, there comes a point where it's hard for anybody in any profession to say no, right? And I think that when I saw that picture yesterday, I was hoping that was exactly why Desmond was here, to talk about Ange's current deal and offer him an improved deal. Do you think it's necessary? Do you think it's something that, because I read a report today and going on about how Ange gets the club, things are more important than money. Absolutely they are. But sometimes it becomes so difficult to turn down. And I just think we need to protect our main asset just now.
Do I think it's necessary? No. Do I think it's the absolutely correct gesture and absolutely the right time? Yes, I do. I'd love to have him on a Jim McLean deal. Remember he used to sign Dundee United players on 10-year contracts and all that. But I think what we should be realistically offering is whatever Brendan Rodgers was signed on, add a year onto that and add 10%. And that's what we should be giving him. Because, why was Brendan Rodgers changed from a rolling contract to a 4-year deal? Was it to protect the asset, or was it to, show his value to the club, or maybe both? Could be both.
I think both, because you do have to protect yourself as a football club. Brendan Rodgers famously went for a compensation of about £9 million, Lawrence. And I think that it was still, the last time I checked, in the top 5 in terms of football manager compensation deals, £9 million to Leicester. Not sure we spent the money, but we certainly got it. And so you're protecting your asset, but you're also saying to Ange, listen, this is how much we value you. Do you think it's something that Desmond should be doing or has already done?
Yeah, totally think Ange deserves to be rewarded for what he's done. And obviously that depends what reward is for Ange. If it's instead of upping my wages, increase my budget, whatever he wants. Will a multi-year contract protect us more? Depends on the buyout clause in his current one. Because let's be honest, Ange is only here as long as he wants to be here. Same happened with Brendan, So it's about a buyout clause and a compensation clause, So do I think it would hurt us more losing Ange than Brendan? I think definitely. He's restructuring the club from top to bottom in terms of football. So yeah, you'd want to get a big buyout clause in there, or a big compensation clause, whatever you want to look at it. Yeah, I'd expect us to reward Ange, and sit down with Ange and say, well, what is reward for you? Is it more in your wages? Is it higher transfer budget? What is it? Is it both? You've kind of an open conversation with him. Where do you want to take us in the next 5 years? If we're going to back you for 5 years, what's the plan?
He's got a plan. I hope the board have got a plan as well, because that's been a criticism in the past, Sean, whereby as long as we're just an inch ahead of Rangers, we're happy. And as a fan base, certainly I'm never happy with that. You always want to have much wider aspirations, and particularly on a European level. It's been 20 years since we got to a final. We're miles away from being a Champions League team. Anybody that maybe watched the football last night will tell you that. But there must be something we can do in Europe. I mean, it was 12 months ago that a Scottish team were in a European final. Celtic have to be looking at that as a genuine aspiration.
Yeah, I get both sides of that argument there. Like when you're second, third, or fourth place, then your realistic target for benchmarking is first place, right? So I get that. But you're right. When you're in first place, it shouldn't be, well, as long as we're better than second place, that shouldn't be. You're right. You should be benchmarking yourself against clubs in other countries at that point. I think the being better than the other team is only valid when you're in second place or later. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Now, we've got a big game, obviously, on Saturday, because we're going to be able to celebrate at home for the first time since being crowned champions. Like you said earlier, Sean, St Mirren have got something to play for. I think they've done really well this season. It might not be a brand of football that you enjoy watching, but Stephen Robinson knows how to organise a team. He done it with Motherwell. He's doing it again with St Mirren. And I'm pretty sure he'll be touted for other jobs, both in Scotland and further afield as well. What do you do, though, if you're Ange Postecoglou going into this game after Saturday's game? I mean, he wasn't happy after it. You heard he was not for giving anybody any freebies. There's no free hits in this Celtic team. Does he make even more changes? Does he go back to what we would recognise more as the starting 11? What does he do on Saturday for you, Sean?
I think he'll revert. I think he'll go Maeda, Taylor will come back in. Which is not to say that these players are going to get completely canned from the squad, but I think that the starting lineup will be much more recognisable. I'd say there might be still a little bit of rotation though, like Iwata might get a shout, Haksabanovic might get a shout, but there won't be anything like Vata or Summers, anyone like that playing. I'd say he's... And last season, no, we didn't have a cup final last season, but he still kept going with a strong team to the end. And when you have a cup final, momentum counts. So I think the players that will be playing between now and the 3rd of June are ones that have got a realistic chance of playing on the 3rd of June. And he'll be looking to have them fight for the place and go into that game with some momentum. I think he's going to be forming his team for that, which is not a game we should be taking for granted. And look, if we go and play St Mirren with the same kind of attitude that we had on Saturday, we won't beat St Mirren. It's as simple as that. Like, I know traditionally the 6th team, the one that kind of sneaks in, like your Livingston or your Partick Thistle or whoever that gets into the top 6 that doesn't look like they belong there, they tend to lose the majority of their post-split fixtures. But I don't see that. I mean, that might end up being the case, but if we go with the same attitude we had on Saturday, they'll take something from Celtic Park.
They're a difficult team to play against. Stephen Robinson has done it. He's stifled Celtic's performances, both as Motherwell manager and St Mirren's manager in the past, Lawrence. I remember a couple of cup finals that were not a cakewalk, anything but a cakewalk under that great Brendan Rodgers side. So I think we are going to be facing that this Saturday. How do you line up? You were talking there about resting Taylor because he's nursing an injury, probably with a view to making sure that he's ready for the cup final, I would suggest. But in a game like this, I don't know if I'm thinking I might know the answer here. Do you stick with Bernabe? Do you keep giving him minutes until he starts to perform? How do you play it?
I think you've got to, a lot is going to depend on how bad Taylor's injury is, isn't it? If you start him thinking there's a 50% chance he's going to aggravate this and miss the cup final, I wouldn't be starting him. I'd stick with Bernabe. But also in the run up to the cup final, you'd want to get Taylor some minutes before it. You wouldn't want him to get in rusty either. Although it's against a low league opposition, you've got to make sure your team's all up for it. So tomorrow, I think Taylor and Bernabe will depend how bad the injury is. Taylor's nursing. I don't know how bad it is. If there's a chance they aggravate it tomorrow, give him another week off. I'd say give him another week off and throw Bernabe in. Up front, Abada's had the chance before for 90 minutes. Doesn't seem to be the starting player. He seems more an impact off the bench. I know Let's Play Jota on the left. A lot of people prefer him there, but we definitely miss Maeda. So I'd probably bring Maeda in, Abada out. Hatate's short That sharpness. Does he need another game to get it up? Will it be better than last week? If not, it's a Watan. And then it's on Kyogo, isn't it? You know.
And what about Moy? What about players like Moy? Moy was a first pick for a spell there.
For a while. Yeah.
And he's no longer even getting a kind of look in. Is he a player that we give game time to in the next 3 games?
Depends if Ange is going to give him another contract and keep him in season. Been here for next season. You know, what's Ange's plan for the midfield?
Do you see him being here for next season?
I would like us to sign another midfielder that's going to do something in Europe. So if we do that, you know, I think potentially Turnbull's probably on his way out, you know, already. So I think it, depending on who we're signing, will depend whether or not Moy's going to stay. And if we sign a player that's going to make a difference in Europe, I think Moy will move. You know, unless the money's not big on a second-year deal. You need to see kind of what kind of money he's asking for. But that's an area I'd like us to improve on. You know, a creative midfielder coming in, a bit more competition for O'Reilly and Hatate's positions. So, yeah, if Ange's already identified some, you know, he seems to do his transfer business early and have everyone identified, and it's first day of transfer window, we're getting people in or announcing deals.
I'd be disappointed if it's not, Lawrence, to be honest with you. Yeah. We're getting used to that now. James Livingston, are we getting JP dialing in from the States? Listen, JP's having too much of a good time on tour with the Twilight Sad and the Cure to be worried about Acsom on a Thursday. But I can confirm he definitely got good Wi-Fi on the plane because he was watching the game. The Urban Culture, this transfer window should be our biggest yet. They are never getting another Ange. Listen, I think we've been talking about that. We're talking about, listen, we've been prepared already. I think Ange has normalised the fact that we might lose 1 or 2 players, but as long as we go out and buy 3 or 4, if that's the case, then I'll be happy. Michael says that Moy has another year on his deal. Daniel Brown, Moy out the door. I wouldn't be chasing Moy out the door. I think he's been an excellent signing, Sean. I know when he signed, a lot of fans were a bit underwhelmed by it, but I think he's done exactly what it says on the tin.
Oh, he's been very up and down in the sense that, like, if you think back to when we lost to St Mirren, he was like #1 culprit that day, and you know he struggled a couple of weeks ago when we played Sevco at Celtic Park. But yeah, no, he's for what we paid for him and what I assume we're kind of the wage bracket we're paying him, he's been good value in that sense, and he's definitely class. You know, I wonder if there's some stat about how many games we've played in the last 10 years with an ex-Man City player in our squad, and you know, Moy's adding to that. You don't sign for Man City when you're a bad player.
No, that's true. There's another thing I want to mention, a couple of things actually before we go. The first one being, Lawrence, Philip Scorb signed for Celtic this week, 15 years of age, Portobello, young boy, quite local to the studio. And there was a story that ran in the Daily Record a couple of months ago, going on about how close he was to signing a deal with Rangers. And it was written in such a way that he was being spoken of in the same breath as Alfredo Morelos and first-team players. And I remember reading it thinking to myself, Lawrence, this is a copy and paste PR release from Rangers to the Record, and they've just printed it. Turns out it was. There was no real truth in that whatsoever. He signed for Celtic, and a much sought-after youngster. We wish him well.
Yeah, safe call, good news story in the Scottish press with no substance to it.
Shock, horror.
It's almost like horror pitches and stuff, you know. But yeah, it's no surprise. By all accounts, great goal scorer, you know, and it's hard. When was the last goal scorer we really brought through the ranks?
I know.
Craney burst on Jerry burst on with some.
Does Craig Beattie count?
Craig Beattie. Mark Butchell showed so much promise, but he just, you know, he was away.
European hat-trick.
Yeah. But you're right. And prior to Craney, you know, before then, it was probably Charlie Nicholas.
And Danny Craney come on by scoring a few goals, didn't he? Scored against Rangers in his Old Firm debut, didn't he, that season? Him and Charlie were brilliant that season.
But I think in terms of prolific goal scorers over a period of time, Charlie Nicholas in the 80s, Jerry Craney in the 90s, since then, you know, there's not been much. There really hasn't. It'd be fantastic. Listen, I'm not building him up because he's only 15 years of age. There's a lot of hard work to be done. But it would be brilliant.
Shout out to Simon, though, because Simon came on as a goal scorer, although he started playing further back. He did bust,
Simon Donnelly?
Yeah, scoring away. Was it Wraith Rovers debut?
Twice.
Scores that season, scored quite a few. Second season at Hampden.
Didn't score a single goal.
Yeah, but there was a lot of pressure on him. It was until we signed Pierre. It was him and Willie Faulkner up front, wasn't it? And although
Don't forget Andy Walker. Don't forget Andy.
Yeah, we had Andy come back as well, didn't he? But yeah, I think there was a lot of pressure in Simon's second season, wasn't there? He was the big hope for us.
I was a fan. I think the partnership both on and off the park that he had with Jackie started coming into play. Brilliant under Tommy Burns. And another ex-Celt, of course, who may or may not be getting another managerial position, Sean, is Neil Lennon.
Oh, yeah.
And there is talk that he's on
How
his
did
way
we go
to
from
Greece.
goal scorer to Neil Lennon?
He scored a couple. Yeah.
One at East End Park.
I
remember the East End Park one.
I love that kit.
The Rangers keeper lost 8, didn't he? One of the games Lennon scored in.
8-1 against Dunfermline, yeah. I think.
Yeah.
I don't remember the
brilliant
keeper.
kit.
It was the full green kit, wasn't it? The
Yeah,
solid
full
green.
green. I've got the Max one Lennon top hanging up.
Oh, have you? Lucky you. What do you make of that? Because, I mean, he's done pretty well, let's be honest. He's done pretty well over in Cyprus. He won them their first trophy in some time. He spoke about that. He says that the culture there is that if you're no flavour of the month, they'll sack you. So he was out of a job. And it was only a matter of time, wasn't it? But I was looking at Scottish football and I thought, is there still a place in Scottish football for him? And, you know, some people try to link him to the Aberdeen job. I think Barry Robson got that on merit. Fair play, well done to him. This looks like a decent move for him, Sean.
Yeah, it definitely is. Olympiacos, chance that if he gets top 2, then he's probably going to be lauded. But then, you know, if he drops down to 5th, then he'll probably get sacked. It's one of those teams, right, where the fans, I think, they have a high churn through of managers. So I'd say there's a good chance he's going to go over there and be back within 12 months with a payoff. That's what I'd reckon. Not to cast aspersions on his abilities, but just because that's the kind of nature of those kind of teams in Greece and Turkey. They just have little patience for that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, one of these things, every time he gets spoken to, Lawrence, he always goes on about coming back to Celtic at some stage. I don't think it will be as a manager. Michael Ross, Charlie Nicholas, the last quality striker we have produced, and that's disgraceful. Yes, it absolutely is when you consider that he left the club in 1983.
Should we only miss out Sean Maloney?
Was he a
winger?
Centre forward though?
Nah, winger.
Was he a centre? He scored goals, yeah, but I don't think he was a centre forward, Lawrence.
He's played up top of a few games for us, you know. But yeah, you know, he wasn't out and out centre forward, but yeah.
Hopefully Philip does the business. Good luck to the young man and his family. He comes from very good stock. Listen, we are going live. We're on the road, and our next guest is actually next week, a week on Friday, a week tomorrow. Jackie McNamara is joining us at Gracie's in Glasgow. I can't wait for it. Lawrence, you'll be there, I'm sure.
Cool.
And there are a few tickets left, something like 5 or 6 VIP tickets as well. If you want to come along, ticket link is underneath the video, and Acsom representatives will be at the game on Saturday wearing their big yellow and green Shamrock tracksuit tops, handing out flyers for the gigs as well. So go and say hello. It's been an absolute pleasure. 800 strong in the live stream this Thursday. Thank you both to Sean and Lawrence Conley for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Hello.